is the universe a neural network? And before we dive into is it or not, let's talk a little bit about what a neural network is. Now, it's important to understand there are two types of neural networks, artificial neural networks and biological neural networks. And artificial neural networks are associated with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and biological neural networks are based on not based on, are your brain. Your brain is a biological neural network. And artificial neural networks are based on the structure of the brain. And let's take a little bit of a segue into understanding what exactly neural networks are before we dive into the question of, is the universe itself some kind of neural network? So to better understand this, let's take a look at an example of an artificial neural network. Here is an example of an artificial neural network. So basically what you have is you have this structure, and each one of these circles that you're seeing here is what's known as a node or a neuron in the neural network. You have a network of nodes, a network of neurons. And so basically you have information that is in the input layer, and then all this information runs through these hidden layers, and then there is an output. And basically each one of these nodes is associated with some kind of value, and these values are weighted. And then what happens is you send the information in, it goes through, then there's an output. If the output is unfavorable, if it is a low quality or wrong or bad output, then the neural network will restructure itself by adjusting the weights of the nodes so that it can increase its accuracy in the output. So basically you feed information in, it goes through the hidden layers, and you get an output, and then it will try again and again by restructuring it to get a more accurate and better output. So it is restructuring itself, it's organizing itself to make itself better. Then this is, in a real simplified terms, how an artificial neural network works. Now, of course, as I said, artificial neural networks are based on biological neural networks, and a biological neural network is, of course, your brain. Your brain is a biological neural network. What is the input? Well, your sensory information, your sensory data is the information that serves as the input information. So the question is, can we understand the universe as being a type of neural network instead of an artificial neural network or a biological neural network? Is there such thing as a cosmic neural network? So not only are we going to look at the idea of the universe itself being a neural network according to new research and data coming in, but then we're going to look at the Hyperion perspective and see that there's actually such a thing as the monadic neural network, the absolute neural network, and see that the soul is itself a neural network, a much more advanced and a different kind of neural network, a living neural network, and not just in an organic or biological way, but in a mental way. So we're going to take a look at all this information and see the new research that's coming in, and seeing how, again, even though scientific materialists are way off, they keep getting closer and closer to what we have been saying for thousands of years. So new research indicates the whole universe could be a giant neural network. All the universe is a neural network, and all the humans merely nodes. The core idea is deceptively simple. Every observable phenomenon in the entire universe can be modeled by a neural network, and that means by extension the universe itself may be a neural network. Now, a professor of physics at the University of Minnesota published an incredible paper last August entitled "The World as a Neural Network." It managed to slide past our notice until today. The big idea, according to the paper, is, and quote, "We discuss a possibility that the entire universe on its most fundamental level is a neural network. We identified two different types of dynamical degrees of freedom, trainable variables and hidden variables. At its most basic, the work here attempts to explain away the gap between quantum and classical physics. We know that quantum physics does a great job of explaining what's going on in the universe at very small scales. When we're, for example, dealing with individual photons, we can dabble with quantum mechanics at an observable, repeatable, measurable scale. But when we start to pan out, we're forced to use classical physics to describe what's happening because we sort of lose the thread when we make the transition from observable quantum information to classical observations. Let me just finish, because this is really short. I'm going to finish reading this real quick because I want you guys to get the big picture of what this research is saying. And then I'm going to give an explanation and show you what's right about this and what's wrong about this. The root problem with sussing out a theory of everything, and the theory of everything is basically an explanation of what existence is. In a nutshell, that's what a theory of everything is. In this case, one that defines the very nature of the universe itself. I mean, a theory of everything has to make sure all the sub-theories work together. You know, for example, right now, quantum mechanics and relativity, which currently is incompatible. They cannot figure out how to merge quantum mechanics and general relativity. This is because they're working in a material ontology that never can do such a thing. They have to switch to an idealist ontology, a mathematical ontology. But before I start going off on a tangent, let me just finish this because this is real short, and then I'll start diving into the errors and the positives about this. So, while theorists have posited everything from a divine creator to the idea that we're all living in a computer simulation, the two most enduring explanations for our universe are based on distinct interpretations of quantum mechanics. These are called the many worlds and the hidden variables interpretations. And they're the ones that Van Schuren attempts to reconcile with his world as a neural network theory. To this end, Van Schuren concludes, in this paper we discussed a possibility that the entire universe on its most fundamental level is a neural network. Now this is a very bold claim. We're not just saying that the artificial neural networks can be useful for analyzing physical systems or for discovering physical laws. We are saying that this is how the world around us actually works. With this respect, it could be considered as a proposal for the theory of everything. So, Van Schuren specifically says he's not adding anything to the many worlds interpretations, but that's where the most interesting philosophical implications lie. If Van Schuren work pans out, then we'll have found a thread to pull on that could put us on the path to understanding a successful theory of everything. If we're all nodes in a neural network, what's the network's purpose? Is the universe one giant closed network, or is it a single layer in a grander network? Or perhaps we're just one of trillions of other universes connected to the same network. While we train our neural networks, we run thousands of millions of cycles until the AI is properly trained. Are we just one of innumerable number of training cycles for some larger than universal machine's greater purpose? So let's break all of this down, and I want to especially answer this question. This last paragraph here is extremely important. If we are all nodes in a neural network, what's the network's purpose? Because remember, what a neural network does is it takes information in, puts information out, and then restructures itself to give more accurate, to make itself more accurate, more optimal. And that's incredibly important and something I want to talk about with regard to if in fact the universe is a neural network, what is its purpose? That's what we're going to talk about. Now, but before we talk about that, I just want to briefly touch on to the theory that Van Schuren is putting out. And his theory is based on many worlds and hidden variables interpretation of quantum mechanics. Now, I want to say real quick, Hyperianism and ontological mathematics rejects the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics because this presupposes a materialist ideology. And many people think that many worlds is an enlightened idea, but it actually is not. What many worlds actually does is a theory put forward by those who want to maintain a materialist paradigm and ignore mind. So while many worlds might seem enlightened, it actually violates reason, it violates Occam's razor, and it is it fundamentally is to get away from mind. If we understand that this is a mental and mathematical reality, we don't need a many worlds interpretation. Many worlds interpretation is put forward to try and sidestep or deny the fact that this is a mathematical and a mathematical and a mental universe. Now, hidden variables, that's a different case. Hyperianism in ontological mathematics is a hidden variable theory. What is the hidden variable in ontological mathematics and Hyperianism? Mind. Mind is the hidden variable. So in ontological mathematics, the hidden variable of mind means that we don't need the many worlds interpretation, and it makes it a violation of Occam's razor. I'm going to put this in more simple ways to understand. Basically, here's what happens. In quantum mechanics, and this is all going to tie up with neural networks and everything we're talking about, but I have to sort of lay the groundwork here. But here's sort of the thing to understand. In quantum mechanics, there are a lot of strange things that occur, like quantum entanglement, quantum tunneling, wave-particle duality, a lot of things that quantum physicists are baffled by. They cannot understand how this is possible. So they try and come up with ways to try and get a grasp on it, okay? And one of the things that is baffling is something known as wave function collapse. Basically, you have the wave function, and this wave function exists in a superposition of possible states, and it then collapses into one state. I'm going to make this easier to understand in a minute, but let me just lay this out. You have a wave function that's in a superposition of possible states, and it collapses into one state. Now, this is baffling. How does it do this is the question in quantum mechanics. So basically, in a nutshell, what the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics does is it says that there is a universe, a new universe generated for every possible state that there could be, for every possible result. And this is let me tell you why you don't need many worlds if you understand that this is a mental reality. Let me give you a really simple example, okay? Let's pretend for a moment that I am a particle. I exist in a superposition of possible states right now. I can continue talking to you. I could get up and do jumping jacks. I could go to my fridge and get something to eat. And there's an infinite number of different things that I could possibly do right now. So I exist in a superposition of possible states. I can do any one of these things. But guess what? I will choose to do one of them. I will choose to do one of them over the other. Right now, in this case, I am choosing to continue speaking to you right now. And this collapse, as one might say, into this state is a mental choice. So you see, it's dependent on mind. My mind collapses the superposition into one state over another. But see, at the particle level, physicists want to say that this is a material world. So they want to deny mind. So when you understand that this is a mental reality, particles also have a mental aspect. Now, this doesn't mean that particles are conscious or sentient, but it means that they have a mental aspect. They are frequency constants of monads, to be more specific, but specific configurations, stable configurations. But particles have this mental aspect. So this is how wave function collapse is justified in Hyperianism and ontological mathematics. Now, what many worlds tries to do, it would say that it wants to get rid of mind. So imagine if a physicist were observing me, but wanted to remove my mind from the picture, right? If physicists wanted to not deny that I was minded, they would look at me like a particle and think, oh, wow, this individual particle could go there or could go there or could stay here. How is it doing this? How is it collapsing into one state rather than another? Well, if you include mind, it's really easy. I'm exercising my mental faculties and choosing one over the other. But if you want to deny mind, which physicists do, and this is really prevalent at the particle level, they inject the many worlds interpretation, which says that there is a new universe generated for every single possibility. So see, if you want to get rid of mind, you have to say, well, maybe in one universe he's at the fridge right now. Maybe in another universe he's doing jumping jacks right now. In another universe he's continuing to talk right now. So this is an analogy for how they view things at the particle level. So while many worlds to the uninitiated seems like an enlightened position, because, ooh, many universes sounds so wild. No, it's actually a result of the denial of mind. Because if you include mind and the fact that this is a mathematical mental reality, you don't need many worlds. It's a mental. It's based on mind. Hidden variables. That's a good thing because mind is the hidden variable. So real quick, now we're talking about with regard to neural networks. So I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that this research coming out is accurate or true because it accepts many worlds and things like this. But what I do want to show you is that scientists are getting closer and closer and closer and closer to what we have been saying for thousands of years. This is what we have been saying for thousands of years, that reality is a living mind. That reality is a living mind. We have been saying this, and physicists, are ever so slowly getting closer and closer and closer. Now, so what they're saying is not accurate or correct, but it's converging upon it. So is the universe a neural network? Well, it's not any kind of artificial neural network. But what about a biological neural network? Is it a brain? Well, yes, the universe is a brain. The universe is a cosmic brain, but it's more than that because it's not just physical. Remember, the mind and the brain in Hyperianism and ontological mathematics are two different things. So you are, remember the avatar perspective, you are a body and a brain, and you are, but that's just your avatar. Now remember the monadic perspective, what you truly are is a living monadic mind, a system of frequency information. Mind. Immaterial, not matter, and you link to the body via the brain. So what the universe is a cosmic neural network of sorts and is a cosmic brain, but it isn't just the universe itself is physical, but this is the representation, this is the space-time representation of the cosmic mind as well. So it's important to realize that it's not anything artificial, and it's not anything just material, but it's also mental. Just like you have a physical body, but that is the way in which you as a mind links to. So this is why physicists and scientists will never understand consciousness in the materialist paradigm, because even when they use artificial neural networks to model the brain, you're never going to get consciousness from it, because you are not just your brain. Your brain is just a link that allows your mind to localize and exist within the holos. So it's important to remember the true neural network isn't the brain, but the true neural network is a monad. So moving on to this next question here. If we're all nodes in a neural network, what's the network's purpose? Is the universe one giant closed network, or is it a single layer in a grander network? Or perhaps we're just one of trillions of other universes connected to the same network. Now that part is not true. There's only one sort of over universe. While we train our neural networks, we run thousands of millions of cycles. Now let me just explain this to you now in terms of Hyperianism. So in Hyperianism, You are a monad, and this is the symbol that we use to represent a monad, a circle, an eternal mind. And what you are is a system of frequency information. And you form various frequency functions. Now, we can understand this in terms of a neural network, but this isn't any kind of artificial neural network, nor is it a biological neural network, but we can understand this as an extremely advanced sort of form, as a mental neural network. Extremely advanced and much different from the kind that, of an artificial one. But nonetheless, it has some very, very important similarities. For example, what does a neural network do? It takes in information. That information goes through the hidden layer, which is weighted in a certain way, and then it checks to see if the output information is accurate or not. If it is not, it goes through again, and it optimizes or restructures itself by varying the weights. So you as a monad are a system of frequencies, and you form various frequency functions. And the amplitudes of these frequency functions serve as the weights for the various frequencies. Anyone familiar with Fourier analysis and synthesis will know about the amplitudes serving as weights for frequencies. So you are a system of frequencies, energy, living mind, that form frequency functions that are weighted by the amplitudes. And essentially what's going on here is you are also a system that is structuring itself to optimize itself, to become more powerful. And so you are constantly structuring, restructuring, and reorganizing yourself and your frequency functions and the information to create a more optimal structure. This is mental evolution. And what is the endpoint? What is the most optimal structure? God, divinity. And this is what Hyperianism is all about. It's about becoming God. So as a monad, you are a system of information that is restructuring, learning, and organizing itself, and seeking the most optimal structure, the most optimal form of organization. This is divinity. This is apotheosis. This is God. And this is where Hyperianism exists, so that every individual can be elevated to divinity. We want to transform the world. We want to make a society, a divine society of gods. So each one of us as a monad, we can understand it, using an analogy as this idealist mental sort of neural network structuring and reorganizing itself in a feedback loop to become divine. So what is the purpose of the neural network? Divinity. But this is the monadic perspective, okay? Now let's switch. We've talked about the avatar perspective. We talked about the monadic perspective. Now let's look at the absolute perspective, because remember, you are a single monad. You are a single mind. But from the absolute perspective, this is a collection of monads. So this is the symbol that we use to represent the absolute, or abraxas. And the absolute is simply the collection of all monads together. The collective. All the monads in existence together, that is the absolute. And you can think of every single circle here as representing one monad, one soul, one mind. So this is a one mind formed by a multiplicity of minds. Right? One and many. This is one mind formed by a multiplicity of many minds. Now, once again, we could understand this as an absolute neural network, in a sense, in an analogy, where every single monad is a node or a neuron in the mind of the absolute. So individually, you are a mental, mathematical neural network of sorts, and then collectively, from the absolute, we form the entirety, the whole. And so, guess what? As each one of these nodes are optimizing, the whole optimizes. But as we begin to work together in more and more harmony, the whole, just like individually you are working on the optimal structure, as a whole, the entirety, the absolute, is working on the optimal structure as well. So the absolute is the God of gods. And that's what we are. We are the absolute. We are each nodes, neurons of the absolute. And as we work together in more harmony, that means that the absolute becomes a more optimally working function, which is divinity for itself. So we all have the capacity to optimize to become individual gods, but as we work together and synchronize and work together to form more cooperative societies and cooperative interactions between each other, we form the one mind, which is the absolute, which is what we are. That is us. We just form various perspectives of it, but from the absolute perspective, that is what we are. We form the God, the absolute. Remember, there's no God outside of us. We are God. That is what we are. So you have this sort of nesting doll feature of sort of neural networks within neural networks. And so remember, the absolute is the one made of many. And it is through our collective interactions as the absolute that gives rise to the universe. So, this is where we have this as above, so below sort of thing. Each one of us is a mind that links to a brain. From the absolute perspective, the absolute is the mind, and the universe, the holos, is the cosmic brain. So do you see how it's more, just like you aren't just a brain, you're a monad, a system of mathematical frequency, a soul. So the universe isn't just physical. The brain is the physical sort of linking system for you as a monadic mind, and the universe is that brain, physical system, or body for the absolute. The universe is the avatar, so to speak, of the absolute. And we, our avatars, our bodies are our avatars for our monadic minds. And so each one of us is a node of the absolute. So you can understand your mind in an analogy as an idealist mental neural network, and then the absolute as the neural network. So going back to what this article is saying, if we're all nodes in a neural network, what's the network's purpose? Are we just if we are all just nodes in a neural network, what's the network's purpose? The network's purpose, us being all nodes of this, is to achieve divinity. And this is what Hyperion is all about. You can become an individual god through your optimization, and then we are the absolute from the absolute perspective, and that is its purpose. And this is why we want to build New Terra. This is why we want to build a new world society. This is why we want to build a world that is meritocratic, teleological, and dialectical. And you can understand this with the analogy here of a neural network. Remember, our new world society, New Terra, first of all, it's going to be organized like a living mind. We want to organize the world and structure its government, society itself, the government institutions, all the institutions of the world. We want to organize it and structure it like a living mind. And in our analogy, like a neural network that's optimizing and updating itself. And so we want to have the pillars, the three pillars here. We want it to be meritocratic, teleological, and dialectical. Meritocratic. What does meritocratic mean? It means that those who are in positions of power or leadership or anything like this get there via their merit, their ability to do a good job, not based on conning or buying their way to the top or anything like that. Because remember, we want to create something that's optimal. And so to create something that's optimal, that's the best, to structure it, We want to make sure it's meritocratic. We want to make sure the most talented, best people, the most qualified people are in the positions they need to be, rather than being able to get there because they know the right people or because they have a lot of money or something like that. So it has to be meritocratic to structure it like this, right? We also have to make sure that it's teleological. Teleological means it's goal-oriented. If you don't have a goal, then how are you going to know if your structure is operating correctly? If you don't know what results you want, how do you know that if your results are accurate or not? Teleological must be goal-oriented. What is the goal? Making every single citizen as best as they possibly can be, the best versions of themselves, and the society the best that it can be, ultimately divinity. What's the goal? Divinity. Divinity for each and every citizen, and divinity for us as a collective, becoming God. Third, dialectical. What does dialectical mean? Dialectics is a complicated subject, dealing with, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, things like this. But in a nutshell, dialectical means it evolves, it can move, it can change. So the system, the new world system, must be evolving. And you can see, once again, if you're trying to create an optimal structure, you need all these components. You have to have the best people in the right positions. You have to make sure that there is a goal. And you have to make sure it's evolved. It can change itself. It can change internally from within. It can update itself. And you must have these elements. And you can see this in the analogy of a neural network. This is, you have to have all these elements in place to create a structure that is structuring itself. Now, this is much more advanced than sort of the really mundane and basic artificial neural networks we have today, but this is why this is an analogy, because it's not an artificial one, it's a true mental, mathematical, ontological neural network, which is much more advanced. And so we have to have these as we create new Terra. We must base the world and structure the world according to a living mind. And this also means not even looking, but these three pillars are extremely important. Meritocratic, teleological, and dialectical must all be in place to create an optimal society, and we are awakening the mind of God through us and within us. And also on top of that, we have to organize the world according to a mind as well, by having the different functions, like a self-awareness, an ego function. We have to incorporate the shadow self. We have to incorporate the mirror self, the power self, as institutions in the world itself, to make sure that it includes the psychology of integration. So the world must become integrated, just like each and every one of us must become integrated psyches. So not only do we have to include what we talked about, but also structuring it according to psychoanalysis. Institutions that deal with the shadow self and repression. Institutions that deal with the mirror self. Institutions that deal with the power self. And institutions that deal with all the different functions. The ego, the I, the selector function. And that the ego and the I would, of course, be formed by the most conscious of individuals, those who are aware of themselves as the absolute, because they are the selector function, and they must know what reality is. They must be absolute aware. They must have an analog all developed. But the thing to understand here is that science is getting closer and closer, but it is so far away. Many worlds is false. This isn't any kind of artificial neural network, and it's not even a biological neural network. This is an absolute idealist, mental, mathematical, ontological neural network that is living, extremely advanced, self-organizing, that exists in a feedback loop with many nodes. And once we understand that, and Hyperions are those who are finally stepping in to this understanding, we can begin to structure the world with this understanding and create new Terra, a divine society.